Well, I can't hear any of that. So apparently,
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
channel, I have to get
My
opaque.
apartment, like whatever this condo is, we've got neighbors that the kids run and thump. It's like they're playing soccer, but it's 24/7. It'll be 3:30 in the morning and there's kids running and jumping and thumping. I'm like what the heck is going on? It's rough. That's what you get for cheap rent.
Hey,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All righty, man. Well, we're good to go. So yeah. Um, Eric, thanks for joining me so much today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about how you came to be in the military in the first place, and we'll go from there.
well, my name's Eric Thompson. I was in Delta Company with 573. Started off in the Army. I joined the Army in 1993, so I had been in for quite a while when that deployment happened. But I was 21 when I joined. I was trying to put myself through college. I wanted to be an arson investigator, and it just, early 90s trying to work and put yourself through college, I guess even now, was just a struggle. And I'd always toyed with the idea of going in the military. So I joined to get the GI Bill. That's what it was for. And I picked, oddly enough, I guess every decision we make gets us to where we needed to be at some point in time. The
Mm-hmm.
MLS I picked, I solely chose because it was the only one they offered me that would help me learn how to read schematics. And I was like, I'm going to need that to be an arson investigator. So I grabbed this MOS. It was tow missiles and dragon missiles at the time. You know, going to do missile repair and work on the maintenance systems and stuff. And I didn't think anything of it. I'm going to do 4 years and get out, And then
Mm-hmm.
when I was in AIT, they came down and they're like, hey, anybody want to volunteer to go to airborne school? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's just make the most of this 4 years. And then I got into the 82nd and
Mm-hmm.
really kind of realized that I enjoyed the military, So I was like, I got to make a career of this, I guess. Uh, then oddly enough, I started when I first got to the 82nd. Uh, Even though I was tow missile maintenance and dragon missile maintenance, it was, hey, all these maintenance shops for those are full. So we're going to send you over to this unit and you're going to work on the Shillelagh missile system on 373 Armor on the Sheridans. So I guess it was destiny to eventually work my way back to 573. So that was
Yeah,
kind of my route.
and that 373 armor was a really interesting, unique unit. It was the only airborne tank unit. I think Sheridan is a reconnaissance vehicle. It's not technically a tank, but I mean it was airborne armor, and we're
Yeah.
the only is the only unit like that in the army.
Yeah. That was something I learned early on in that unit or talking to people. It's like it's the M551A1 Sheridan light armored reconnaissance vehicle. It's not a tank. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But no,
Yeah, it
that was
looks
a
like
good
one, but
time.
yeah, yeah,
It
all the
does.
armor on it is aluminum. It's not armor because it could
Yeah.
float. Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks mean, but it is not. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But no, I would say I had a good time working with that unit. And it was very much like we were with 573, where the maintenance guys, and I think everybody in Delta Company will forever say they were 573, but technically
Mm-hmm.
we were second FSB.
Mm-hmm.
We were never wore a 573 flash, never says, my
Mm.
ERB doesn't say 573. Yeah. So
Oh, interesting.
we were technically Delta Company 82nd FSB. Um,
Okay. Okay.
so,
Yeah.
and that was just kind of it was kind of a change when they started those, when they started the
Mm-hmm.
Ristas and reorganization stuff. So I don't know if they ever had intended to make the maintenance company part of the maneuver unit or not. Um, I mean, I watched a lot of changes go through. When I first got to the 82nd, you had three forward support battalions and a main support battalion. And I was in the 782nd Main Support Battalion, but in a separate, like 183rd Combat Support Detachment, which was some of the maintenance guys for the
Mm-hmm.
Sheridans. Like the whole mechanics and turret mechanics guys like that were 373, and they were in the motor pool over there. But like the guys that did the optics and the guided missile and stuff like that, we were all in this random 183rd Combat Support Detachment
Mm-hmm.
thing that was 373 maintenance. So it was that was kind of my career for the majority of my maintenance career, all the way up through going with 573.
Yeah. And for real quick, for anyone that doesn't know, what exactly is the ITAS? What is that piece of equipment used for and
Uh,
how does it work?
yeah, so when I first came in, it was just the tow missile system, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a wire guided missile. Um, and then somewhere in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
they started as the integrated target acquisition system. And really all it was the tow had like a day sight and a night sight. There's two different
Mm-hmm.
pieces, and had a bunch of equipment that came along with it. It was kind of big, heavy, bulky, cumbersome things. You had to click two of them together. And then Raytheon came out with like one integrated sight, and
Mm-hmm.
the the missile was the same. Um, so some of the other things, the housing unit that the missile locked into for the ground or turret mounted, the ones that could go on the Humvee or on the tripod,
Mm-hmm.
those initially had like just knobs that you rotated. But when it came to the integrated sight, they had little pistol grips and thumb selectors, and you could change from white hot to black hot right there on the thumb
Mm-hmm.
select. Uh, so I actually got to be the first maintenance guy in the Army
Mm-hmm.
trained to fix them. I got sent out to McKinney, Texas to work with the engineers who developed it to learn how to do maintenance on it. And then again, with my like random path to, destiny meets, I guess, I went out with Alpha Troop 117 CAV
Mm-hmm.
and did the user tests for it down at Eglin Air Force Base. So I spent
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit of time supporting Alpha Troop 117 CAV, which probably some old Alpha guys will always say was the original Shadow Troop.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even when it changed to what was that, Charlie 73rd for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then it 3505 turns into 573. There were still some Humvees with the old Shadow Troop
Mm-hmm.
logo on it that came over from Alpha 117, and then initially Alpha Troop 573 we called Shadow
Mm-hmm.
Troop forever. So
Yeah, that's where
yeah,
we
so
pulled
it
that
was
from. It was oh, sorry, not to talk over you. Yeah, that we pulled the name for Alpha Troop was following the lineage of Shadow Troop from Alpha 117, which I always loved. When I first got in the 82nd, it was still Alpha 117 with the Reaper with the moon, and the moon would be colored differently depending what platoon. And I just always thought it was really cool to
yeah
keep that lineage going.
yeah that was pretty cool, and I was like I said, I don't think a whole lot of people knew what the tow missile was, but the ITAS, I
Mm-hmm.
was the ITAS maintenance guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that's what I was supposed to do, is fix those sights in the guidance system and stuff. But that whole unit was different. 573 was different, and we get over there and nobody's shooting tow missiles, so I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
job. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so it was interesting. Uh, but given the way they stood everything up, I felt like it didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Well, a lot of the those skills would pass over to different systems. So the ITAS and the LRAS, the long range Advanced Scout Acquisition System, LRES 3 with for three S's. That's very similar to the ITAS internally, I believe. And so
Yeah.
your skills with the ITAS transferred over to the Scout equipment that we had.
Yes, we even tried the unit even tried to get us into like a LRAS repair, quick
Mm-hmm.
maintenance repair course before we left. And it got shut down. And it was gonna be like a
Mm-hmm.
2 week quick maintenance thing or something. I don't know what the Wise or something. I think it was more of a Raytheon. They're not the proper MOS type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think before the inactivation ceremony at Jerome Papas' house, me and Pavlik were talking about that, about me
Mm-hmm.
fixing LRASs when we weren't supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
They got pretty upset about that. But really, the only difference is um, the LRAS is bigger because it has a bigger lens, right? So it can see
Mm-hmm.
further because it really is just a surveillance system. And
Mm-hmm.
that part of it was changed out with the ITAS, which had to have guidance systems,
Mm-hmm.
communication type stuff for the missile. So this is really the only difference between them. You can figure out most of it. And some of that goes back to, from getting started at 373 Armor.
Mm-hmm.
When I got on the Sheridans, I was not a shillelagh missile mechanic. And there was no manuals left. There was no
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like, we fixed things by using the parts manual,
Mm-hmm.
asking a gunner, like, hey, what happened? I don't know. It lost track, and it went sideways because that was an infrared guided missile. And we'd look through
Mm-hmm.
the book and start with, oh man, this circuit card says tracker motor control circuit card. Let's start there. So
Mm-hmm.
it was really learning how to, I don't know, troubleshoot things that you don't know, but using just some common sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that really helped me out being able to transfer and take similar systems and just take anything I had worked on over the years and kind of figure out, like, well, this has got to work this way. I mean, it's a night vision sight with a big lens on it, so
Mm-hmm.
it can't be that. Let's go. So, and I think that
Yeah.
one Pavlik
Mm-hmm.
that was the one that it was Randolph's, when Randolph, you know, they took an IED or a round through it and
Mm-hmm.
it got busted up pretty good. I think it hit his face some too. Yeah.
Yes, I was driving when that happened. Yeah, I that was we'll jump into that. I definitely want to talk about that. It's the tow systems though. I
Yeah.
I love those. I loved learning to shoot those, and I love they gave me my two favorite military phrases is tracking like a tow over water, because tows over water being wire guided, they lose efficiency and tracking ability, and so it means that like you don't know like you're not getting it, and then
Yeah. I got no clue what's
like for
going on. Yeah.
status, yeah, like status, how you doing? It's like I'm pink like a toe, because the toes have the missiles on the rear would have the humidity indicators to let you know if they'd been intruded with moisture or not. And it's blue if it's good and it's pink if it's bad. And part of loading was always to check and make sure you had a good missile. But like no one outside of any, if you have never done anti-tank stuff in the army, it doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I'm pink like a toe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of those things do. It is weird to see some of the lingo that has crossed over through generations, some World War II,
Yeah.
whatever, you get stuff. But then, yeah, definitely with some of the smaller things where we have our own language that people just don't understand. Even
Mm-hmm.
inside, like you said, if you were somebody that never was around, anti-tank stuff, you wouldn't know
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah, that was one of the big things I enjoyed about being a scout. Those and the javelins. I love those. I never got to do a test fire on a javelin. It was just the trainers. I did test fire a toe. But yeah, being the reconnaissance unit out of the 82nd, that lineage from Alpha 117, that had been a divisional cavalry unit, which means that you're linked basically to 82nd Airborne High Command. So whatever the divisional command needed, they would go to reconnaissance unit, which is Alpha 117. They had Kiowas and then the ground troops, and it would go like there. So even after the reorganization, we were always getting all the toys first. So we had the improved ITAZs first. We had the LRAS first, and it was always a test bed for all these reconnaissance or technology tools to see how it was going to spread through the rest of the division. And it was just interesting. You had to be creative, like you were saying, and then you had to create this chain of knowledge to pass along to the next person down the line and just keep it moving.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was like I said, I'm doing all that ITAS testing. There were so many things, even that first generation of them that went through. I don't even know if they're any better now, but the battery systems on them were pretty crap.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And,
The LRAS battery systems, one of the things I hated the most was that the batteries would charge at a different rate than the use. So if you were to plan out like an observation post for a long period of time, you would have to chart your battery use versus your charging use to get the most out of what you needed. And it would I'm in the Army. I'm not supposed to be doing math, right?
yeah, yeah, no,
Those
they
the
were
LRAS
pretty
is
bad.
it was such a beautiful piece of equipment. I think it's still in use. I don't know if it's been upgraded, but when we had it, it did so much because you could use a laser to identify a 10-digit grid, which is accuracy down to, I think, 1 meter, 1 or 3 meters. It's very
Yeah,
close. It's been
it's real
17
close.
years, and then you could have that shoot over to the satellite communication system, the FBCB2, and point that grid specifically where you want and like email that out to anyone. So if you see something and you want artillery support, in theory, you could just point it at it, get your accurate grid, and then email it over and then have artillery come. Except in the Army's wisdom, the only thing you need to make that happen was a $20 cable that would go between the system and the FBCB2. And for some reason, we could never get that cable. So we could never use that ability. That's just how
Yeah,
the
there's
Army
like
works
one
right
thing.
there.
Everything's so much easier now. We don't need that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, now it's all drones, so we're all
Yeah,
outdated and old now. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I never understood being a maintenance guy.
Mm-hmm.
When I first went through AIT, part of my AIT was being able to like troubleshoot a problem
Mm-hmm.
down to the circuit card and then pull that circuit card and troubleshoot the circuit card. And I could, we were able to desolder and resolder single layer circuit boards,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, this is cool. I can do this. I can,
Mm-hmm.
this really expensive system here, and I can pull off a resistor or something and put it back on. And then
Mm-hmm.
by the time I got through airborne school and maybe a couple of months in the 82nd, contract has changed. We're just plucking and chunking whole circuit cards. And
Mm-hmm.
it's something to do about, well, man hours, and you're going to get, it costs this much to do whatever. And I was like, and my man hours aren't changing whether I work 8 hours, after PT or 24 hours a day. My pay
Mm-hmm.
ain't changing. I don't get overtime. I was like, but now I'm placing $1,000 circuit card,
Mm-hmm.
whereas before I could replace a 10-cent resistor. And somehow
Yeah.
somebody said, oh no, this is cheaper, it'll work better this way. I was like, I don't think so, but sure.
Well, that ability to be flexible, to know how to fix things on your own, that was always integral to airborne units. Again, when I got into reconnaissance unit with Alpha 117, our maintenance department it was very difficult to get maintenance parts to keep our vehicles running out at Fort Bragg. And so we just learned how to fix everything ourselves and how to steal parts from the aviation brigade because they don't need vehicles at work. But it was part of that kind of it's amazing how much of the military runs off of that, of people that have to learn what the system is to maintain it themselves and keep it going. And that when we got overseas, we ended up doing that. When we first got to FOB Warhorse, and summer 2006, the vehicles they gave us were beat to hell. And we were going through the boneyard, picking off of vehicles that had been blown up, like people had died in those, and we're stripping parts off them, trying not to be caught, because I don't know why they didn't want you to take parts from them. But, that's how we were rebuilding our vehicles to do missions because we had no support.
Yeah. I remember a lot of that going on when we first got over there. Even when, they first gave us Bradleys, they gave us the worst ones they had.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And then it was like I think one of them even came without a 25 millimeter barrel with
Mm-hmm.
it. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's a gate now, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they gave us some pretty garbage stuff,
Mm-hmm.
redheaded stepchildren type thing, I guess.
Well, let's fast forward, I guess, a little bit to jumping into August 2006. I think that's when we got in country.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, August 2006. Let's just jump to that point. Um, they split up the squadron. Part went out to Fob Caldwell out towards the east Iran and Balad Ruz area. Part of us went out to Fob Warhorse. And where did you end up for that?
So I went out to Caldwell, right, where the majority of the squadron went. And again, the man without a job,
Mm-hmm.
didn't have much of a job to do. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know at what point I started doing this. I think it was fairly early on. Um, and people like Bravo and Charlie were out there. Alpha was what at Patrol Base Otis,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
early, and so we started. I had somebody needed something. They needed something built or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if you remember Specialist Burris or not, but he was the guy that worked with me on the eye test. We were the two.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for. I pretty much throughout all the train up, I was with the Alpha Troop MST. So like I did JRTC mostly with Alpha Troop and stuff like that. Spent a lot of time with the Alpha Troop MST. And Burris did a lot with like Bravo Troop. But anyway, somebody needed something built, and we had a welding trailer. I don't even know where this welding trailer came from. I don't think it was organic to the unit. I think it was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you fell in on this equipment. Here's your welding trailer, and it was all
Mm-hmm.
locked up. And the maintenance unit, because the whole squadron was shorthanded going out. We weren't at full
Mm-hmm.
strength, and so we didn't have a welder. Like there was nobody that was their MOS. But I had my older brother had taken welding class, and I'd done a little bit of welding here and there growing up. So we cut the lock and just said, "What do you need? Let's figure this out." Again, it was like, here we go. So I just started trying to make secondary gun mounts and weld them for people, and
Mm-hmm.
so that was kind of my early on in the deployment. I did go out to Otis, and I think I stayed out there for about a week. It wasn't super
Mm-hmm.
long. Actually, I think it was LRAS issues that I went out there for. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Rode out with Jason Mail on Jason's truck.
Mm-hmm.
So me and Jason were roommates uh, when we went to the deployment. On the deployment, he had moved in with us a couple of weeks before. Just we played on the rugby team together. So when he go, I think back to her family for the deployment, and he's put his stuff at his dad's house and crashed at my place for like 2 weeks. But so yeah, I rode out there. I think I actually the first night I got out there, I went out on a mission, because that's just what
Mm-hmm.
we did in 573. That's how we trained. And from the get go, it seemed like all the way back to that JRTC rotation where we just did stuff that they weren't expecting, So then
Mm-hmm.
that just carried over, and we got out there. Next thing you know, it's like, well, you don't really have a job. Oh, well, can you weld? Can you do this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you shoot a gun? Like
Mm-hmm.
sure, let's get going. So that's where I ended up at Caldwell, and then what I think Alpha Troop didn't even come back till like, or Alpha Troop came back, and that's kind of what kicked off what Turkey One, I guess. You know how that. I think they were reorganizing or whatever was
Hmm.
going on. They were doing their flyover. Had something to do with like, hey, Alpha Troop's back. We're gonna reorganize the battle space or whatever.
Yeah, real
So
quick,
far,
I'll fill in on that real quick because your Wi-Fi is still catching up anyway, so I'll buy a couple of seconds for your Wi-Fi to stabilize. Yeah, we came back out to Caldwell in 2000, or I'm sorry, in November of 2006. It was during the transition. 112 Cavalry with First Cavalry Division had moved into Warhorse, replaced who we were with, which I am forgetting. I think it was 468 or 469 Cavalry with Fourth ID. And we Alpha Troop had been pulled out down to Warhorse to give time and space for that transition to happen. And then 3 months later, they decided the other unit had come in. So we were pulled out of the patrol base and all the other little areas we'd been doing operations and sent out to Caldwell to reunite with the rest of the squadron. Now, where it gets interesting, which I don't know, probably doesn't matter here too much, but if you when I post the Josh Kinzer video, we talk about it at length there. That pullout gave more room and time. So we on literally on October 31st of that year, we did an operation called Shakumaku, which is a raid to go and take out a safe house and kill a bunch of Al Qaeda guys. Well, on November at the end of that, Captain Few went out, talked to all the local leaders in town, promised, said, look, what we're doing, we're going to stabilize this area. We'll bring in priests. We're going to make this area stable. November 1st, the very next day, First Cav decided we don't need this unit anymore and pulled us out and sent us away, which left a gap for Al Qaeda to come back in, reoccupy all those towns, and it made the DRV incredibly dangerous after that. And anyway, it looks like we have caught up. So yeah, let's go from there.
yeah. So no, well, looks like I lost it. Something. Are you there?
All right, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, this came up when I was talking to Brad Rather. Sometimes the camera overheats. I thought I had that figured out. Let me pull that out a little bit. Sometimes the camera overheats, which is why using the big camera might not always be good. If it keeps doing it, I'll just end using that and go back to the webcam because that's built in. It's just this gives me a lot better sound. But yeah, sorry. Hopefully we won't have that happen again. So, and now the neighbors are
Well, at least I can't hear the
anyway.
neighbors on mine. So yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, they're building
Yeah.
something, so construction work. Um, okay, so yeah, sorry. So we were just getting back to the move out to Caldwell. What was going on there in the beginnings of Turkey? Um, and you talked about coming out to Patrol Base Otis, riding with Jason Mail, who was one of our mortars. Didn't you run into some IEDs? I know he did. I'm not sure if you were with him when that happened or not.
I don't think I did. I didn't no IEDs going out on that first time to Otis.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I encountered an IED until probably Turkey Bowl because
Mm.
when Turkey Bowl kicked off, I rode with I really started working again with the Alpha Troop MST. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like Ty Smith, Chris Lynch, Worcester, uh, and Anthony White. So yeah, going out on that, I mean, I think IDs like I know we didn't actually hit one, but I
Mm-hmm.
know there were any number of like there's an ID going off over there for a little bit or
Mm-hmm.
something. Actually, I remember when you guys got ambushed when your platoon
Mm-hmm.
when that happened because like you guys pulled up and those guys hey, it would give up and then
Mm-hmm.
they started shooting and you guys were in a fight and it was we were right behind you. You guys are pointing off your four trucks and then it was our truck and Danny Ray Sloan's truck,
Mm,
kind of watching the backside for you guys. We were right there behind you guys,
mm,
um, watching the other like culvert or irrigation ditch
mm,
to the backside when you guys were engaging there. So I watched that whole thing go down.
mm.
Very interesting, you know.
Yeah, that was crazy because everyone was right behind us when they started shooting. They must have been amped up on adrenaline and not seeing what the situation was, because there was no way those guys were going to survive. It was just making sure that we didn't die alongside
Yeah,
them. But I always really gave a lot of credit because that firefight was very close range. They were using steel core ammunition, and it went through all the tires. I think it took out all four tires on the Humvee. They were throwing grenades at us as well, so the shrapnel shredded everything. And so my Humvee was, because we were taking cover behind it, and they shot up like Randolph in it. Um, but when the firefight was over, and the rest of us were doing security cordon, or I
it was hot.